All right, here we go. Welcome back into Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler. We normally talk football on this show, but since Iowa has a bye week and Iowa basketball tips off here in a few days, no better time to do our annual basketball preview show. And for the first time in, frankly, many years, I know we're not the only ones, but Tyler and I are super pumped for this new era to start with Ben McCollum. It seemed like it was forever ago when we fired Fran, when we hired Ben, when he had his opening presser and we started getting some of these players like, gosh, the season, can it start now? And it's like 6-7 months from now. And here we are. We are finally back. Tyler, I know you are super pumped. And the reason why I know that is because this is the first preview show that you have done for basketball. Because usually you're kind of, I know you towards the back end of Fran's tenure, you were starting to get little kind of, especially at the beginning of the season, you didn't really get it as excited for the year. And here you are. I know you're super pumped for it.
Especially the last few years, like you said, I think for me, it was always, I'd get more excited once football was over with and I had to focus solely on basketball. This is a totally different situation with, like you said, Ben, and just the excitement, energy around the program right now. Yeah, we're tipping off in a few days. I'm super excited. I think it's the perfect opportunity to talk some basketball. So let's do it.
Let's begin first, though, with Ben and what we have thought of him so far before the season has even started. We haven't even tipped off yet. I guess if you technically want to count the 2 scrimmages, but a real game we haven't even done. But I think so far, man, like he has done an A+ job. And I'm not just saying that to say that. No, I really do think he has, because I think he's injecting energy into the program that, let's face it, was starting to get very stale under Fran. Very stale. And I think the biggest thing with Ben is his connection with the fans. And I think a big thing is him being from Iowa and growing up an Iowa fan. I think with Fran, he almost kind of was like an outsider. And I know you could say that with Kirk Ferentz too, because he's from the East Coast, but Kirk really has done a good job of where you almost feel like Kirk is from the state of Iowa. Fran just never felt that way. It just felt like there was like a barrier between the fans and himself in the program. And Ben is like complete opposite. Like he wants the fans to be part of the journey. I mean, one of the first things he said was, we need everybody to be with us on this ride. We need the fans. We need people around to help us get to be where we want to be at. And I love that because he's including us. Like he wants us to be part of the journey. And so I think that is the first thing. I think him, you saw him like at Kinnick, he goes through the student section. He's on every podcast imaginable this offseason. You go on YouTube every week and he's on some different podcast. Like he's wanting to make an effort. And I know, people are going to be like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what you do when you're a new coach, but it's really easy to not engage that much, right? There's already going to be excitement because it's a new coach, new era, all that.
Right.
But he's taken it to like a whole new level by putting that energy into wanting to make us feel connected with the program. Yeah.
I think another word for it is just like, I think he's being authentic, right? I think he, it's one thing to say, oh, let's involve the fans and, but and it's like he keeps talking about us. He keeps, you mentioned it, selfies at games, going up to the student section, being at the football games and stuff like that. And then also, like what you talked about the media, it's one thing to play nice with the media. It's another thing to do every interview possible, especially when you're a new head coach. You've got a million things to do before as your first season as an Iowa, a men's basketball coach. So I think it's really impressive. I think like it just speaks to like the authenticity of him. And you mentioned it. I mean, he's from Iowa.
Yeah, I just think with Ben, I think the reason why he has so much energy and so much passion is because he is a Hawkeye through and through. I mean, he grew up an Iowa fan. He was born in Iowa City. And so he wants to take this program to new heights. All right, so let's get now into like what we can expect here in year one, because obviously there are a lot of unknowns, because when you look at this roster from top to bottom, Bennett Sturt's really good player. You saw what he did last year. You got some other guys that did good at Drake, but the big question is are they going to be able to elevate from, Missouri Valley to the Big Ten? And then you have other guys like Alvaro Figueres, right? Will he be able to elevate from, I think he played in the Horizon League to the Big Ten, right?
Yep.
One thing, though, that I know is going to change, I mean, clearly it's going to be the style, right? No more up-tempo, always relying on the offense. Defense is optional, not really physical, rebounding, never winning the rebound margin. Like, that is going away. What we do know is a defense is not going to be optional under Ben. And Cooper Koch talked about this the other day on some podcast he was on, or maybe it was like an article or something. They asked him what the biggest difference is. And he said, defense. I mean, they practice defense over half the time. So it's no secret that defense is a big thing under Ben. And obviously it was not under Fran. Not saying that they didn't practice defense under Fran, but damn well it was not preached upon. It was not something that they really focused on, clearly, because it was every single year it was bad. I mean, if there was a few years there where it was good, then maybe you could be like, oh, maybe it's an outlier. No, every single year the defense was bad. So clearly it was not a big thing that they focused on. I do know we will not be soft under Ben. We're going to be physical because they take the offseason. I mean, that's why Ben talked about how big the offseason is for him, with nutrition, strength and conditioning. You saw Cam Manning added 25 pounds. So we're not going to be soft under him. I think another thing that you are going to get is the buy-in, especially from the Drake transfers, right? All these guys, especially Bennett Sturts, could have went elsewhere. They could have, Bennett could have went to the NBA if he wanted to. But these guys have bought into Ben's system. And so it was an easy, once Ben went to Iowa, okay, we're all coming to Iowa. There's no question. We're not going to take visits anywhere else. We're going to come to Iowa. And so you're going to get that buy-in from those guys. And majority of the team are guys that were playing for him last year. And then the cohesion between the coaching staff and also the roster as well, because this coaching staff is the same coaching staff from Drake. I mean, the only exception is the guy from Texas Tech. So that's what we do know as of right now. I would say what we don't know, though, is can they take that next step into the Big Ten? And then how good will the offense be? Because that is something where I feel like, especially maybe right away, the offense, it might take a little bit for them to gel, right? Defense might be there, but it might take a little bit to kind of see how this offense works. So that is something where I just don't know, how good can this offense be?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on kind of everything I was thinking about. I mean, I think the biggest things that I think we do know, like you said, physicality, toughness, sort of that mentality of we want to actually play defense.
Yeah,
I think will go a long way. And it, like we said, we'll get into the roster a little bit later, but obviously we don't have a true five. So it's more about, I mean, Ben's talked about it. It's more about how do we do a good job of playing team defense to prevent the ball from entering the paint, right? Instead of being well, we don't have a 5-man, so we can't guard the paint. How about we try to do a good job of making sure it doesn't get down there and put us in a bad position? So I think and this leads to my other point of what we do know. I think we have a guy that preaches X's and O's and is one of the most
I'm glad you highly regarded. I brought that up.
Yeah, highly regarded coaches out there in terms of being just a genius on the basketball court. And so I think he's going to do, and you said it might take some time, but once we figure out this lineup, this, who we really want to go with, how many guys we want to go with, I think he'll do a very good job of developing a plan and executing and putting us into a position for what we're good at.
Yep. No, I totally agree. I do think that with Ben's his smartness, and like you said, the X's and O's, he will make adjustments. Right. So as we begin the year, let's say the 3-point shooting isn't very good. He'll make adjustments and figure other ways on the offense side of the ball. I do want to get into the two scrimmages because I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what we just kind of talked about, especially offensively, because the one thing that we didn't do very well in these two games. And once again, you can't take a whole lot away from these two scrimmages, especially the first one against St. Louis University, because frankly, we were up at half. And then the second half, it sounds like we barely played any of our starters. And that's kind of when SLU just kind of went on a huge run and they end up winning 90-some to 70. Yeah, not a good game. But once again, just can't take a whole lot away from that game. Texas Tech, I think that was more of an actual quote unquote game because it did seem like or it sounded like we played kind of the guys that we are going to kind of have to rely on this year. We shot the ball really bad from the three. I think we finished like 5 for 26. And then we were like 26 for 37 at the free throw line. So I mean, getting 37 shots free throw line, that's a lot. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of missed opportunities, and to only lose by 10. I mean, think about that. Under Fran, if we shot 5 for 26, we're losing by 20, 30 points. I mean, it's just a
team
guarantee.
Like Texas Tech.
Especially like a team like Texas Tech. And then it sounds like we won the rebound. But yeah, both games though, we did shoot the three ball pretty bad, especially that Texas Tech game. And so that is where, going back to like what we don't really know yet, is how good will this offense be? Because even though it was scrimmages, doesn't really matter. We need those numbers to be better. I mean, you can't shoot 5 for 26, right? You just can't. I was encouraged by the Texas Tech game. I really was, especially after, the St. Louis scrimmage. I mean, Texas Tech is going to be a really good basketball team this year. One of the best teams in the Big 12. They're 10th in the country in the preseason polls. To be able to kind of put up a fight against them, I think at halftime, it was only a 4-point game, and it just sounded like Texas Tech kind of went on a big run in the second half, and that's kind of where it separated. But then we kind of came back, and then lost by 10. But 3-point shooting though, that to me is a little bit of a cause of concern, because we do need that to be a little bit better. It doesn't need to be great, because once again, like under Fran, the 3-point shooting had to be great because our defense was so bad.
Because you're always in a shootout.
Yes. I think under Ben, it doesn't need to be great, but it needs to be a little bit better than what we shot the other night.
Yeah, that was I guess maybe a little bit surprising, just because we think we have some good shooters on this team. And again, it's exhibition, it's secret scrimmages. It's, Ben talked about how, especially I think in the first game, it might be both. He said normally they don't do any self-scouting for these guys. They don't really make that many adjustments coaching staff wise. They kind of let the guys try to work through things and figure it out, because there's going to be tough times, in games where guys are going to have to work through shit, right? Just as a basketball player mentally. And so I think it's a kind of a good exercise, if you will, for the team and try to work through some things. But I agree, shooting's got to be a lot better. Rebounding in that against Texas Tech, I mean, of all teams, that I feel like they're just physical and you think of physicality, rebounding, toughness, defense with them, watching them in the tournament. So, improving, definitely improving from the first scrimmage. But I mean, it's hard to take too much away from it. Obviously, you got to wait till actual game time.
All right, so let's get into the roster a little bit. It does sound like, I don't know where I saw this at, but I saw it somewhere where Ben talked about his rotation. Sounds like most games, about 8 guys is what he kind of likes to play. And then depending on how the game's going, if we're up by a lot, or if we just need another guy out there, foul trouble, whatever, play up 10 guys. When you look at this roster, let's start with maybe like the weaknesses. And I brought this question up to Austin and Colby, because it's tough to really, pick either or. Yeah. I do think I believe that we are still maybe one player away. Like, I think this team can be good, but I think if we're one player away from being like really good. And I don't know if that's like another combo guard who could possibly start, but be a really good backup player, where it would move Bennett to maybe more off ball and just being another guy, because, Cale Combs, he could be good for us, but we don't really know. Or is it another guy, in the front court, right? Like whether it's a starting center or a guy that can come off the bench and be a guy that you can rely upon, because once again, Trevin Erock, he's a freshman. So, I mean, can you really rely on that year one? I don't know, maybe, but I think like one or the other. I don't know. What do you think? Like, if you had to pick, if God told you could do one or the other, what would you do? Because it's tough. Like, I don't really know.
It's really tough. I think you look at last year in the Missouri Valley with this Drake team, and specifically Bennett. I mean, he played 39, 40 minutes a game, and he could do that, I think, in the Valley. I think it is going to be much more of a challenge for him to try to be Superman for 40 minutes a game and not have somebody spelling him a few minutes or, taking some of that pressure up. But to be honest, dude, knowing the Big Ten and just the physicality, I would say probably a 5-man, not having a true big man to defend, but also, be able be able to score in the paint, with some of these centers and front court guys that we're going to be seeing in the Big Ten. I mean, you think of Purdue. I mean, they're always going to have a 7-foot guy, right? So
Michigan has a 7'3" guy.
I know Oregon's got a good front court player too. So, I mean, it's tough. I would lean the 5-man.
I would too.
Ben's talked about how expensive these guys are, right? I mean, especially year one. You're like Ben talked about. He's trying to fill out a roster, not just necessarily get one guy. So
So 2 things here. So I think there will be games this year. I'm not saying every single game, but there will be specific games where we will be hurt by not having, like a legit center. I mean, you just talk about like the Purdue, the Michigans. I mean, there are a couple teams in the league that do have really big guys down low. But number 2, though, I think what will help us though is like Cam Mannion as a center, he's only 6'8", but he does play, I think, bigger than what he is. But I think the biggest thing though is you look at the rest of the roster, like the rest of the starting 5, we are very lengthy, right? Like Bennett Sturts, 6 foot. What is he? 6'4", 6'5", right?
Yep.
Tavion Banks, who's probably going to play the 3, he's 6'7", right? Alvaro Figueres, who's going to be power forward, he's 6'10". So we have length at other positions that should help being a little bit smaller at the center position. For me, the next thing I want to talk about with the roster is the X factor. And I believe, I mean, you could obviously say Bennett Sturts, but I think you know what you're going to get with Bennett. The guy for me is Alvaro Figueres, because if you tell me after the end of the year that, man, Alvaro, he really was good for us. I mean, because we paid decent amount of money to get him. He was a rising player of the league last year. You saw what he did against Alabama in the tournament, had a double-double. If you tell me after the end of the year, like, man, he was really good for us, he averaged almost a double-double most games, did what he needed to do, then I think this team or this year can be really good. Now, if you tell me, he was okay, definitely maybe wasn't what we thought, because he struggled overseas in the Europe thing. Granted, it's different environment, different style. Like, you can't really take a whole lot away, but he did struggle a little bit there. Sounds like he struggled against St. Louis, but then he played better in the Texas Tech game. So kind of
sounds like inconsistent, right?
Yeah. And so if he's like pretty damn good for us, I think this team can go a long way, because, he has the entire package. I mean, he can spot up from 3. He can post. He's very, very lengthy to rebound. Yeah. And so he is 100% the X factor for us, because once again, you know what you're going to get with Bennett. You kind of know what you're going to get with some of these other guys in a way. If he can be the X factor, average double digits in points, get close to 10 rebounds a game, or if some games he's getting double doubles for us, that's huge. And another thing too is he can pass the ball pretty well as well. And that's something that maybe he's not talked about, but like the floor spacing with him and everything, he is 100% the X factor for me.
That's a really good one. I mean, we talked about, not having maybe a secondary ball handler behind Bennett. I mean, if he can be the guy to initiate some of the offense, I think he could be a guy that takes some of that pressure off of Bennett as well. I went with maybe a lesser known guy. I mean, maybe not to Drake fans, but I went with Tavion Banks just because, I mean, I think he's versatile. They list him as a guard forward. Like, he's 6'7". He was the 6th man of the year in the Missouri Valley. I think everyone rightfully so talks about Bennett Sturts, but kind of the unsung hero of that team and of that conference was Tavion. And he can rebound, he can defend, he can score if he needs to, or if he gets the opportunity. He's just kind of a guy that does all the dirty work too and doesn't get a lot of credit for it. And I think he could be one of those guys that maybe at the end of the day doesn't get all the stardom or the fanfare, but when you at the end of the game you go, man, he played his ass off. So I think he could be an X factor for the season.
Yeah, especially if you tell me that he improved his shooting, right? Because last year he was a little inconsistent. But and that's something that he worked on in the offseason, is being a little bit more of like a better spot up shooter, maybe can shoot the 3 a little bit. And if he can improve upon that, he's going to be a very useful player for us for sure. Brandon Howson, I think for him, you know what you're going to get from the 3-point line. Is there anything else that he's going to be able to do for us, right? Can he step up and be a guy that from time to time can drive and things like that? Defensively, that's something that I'm a little worried about for him. He wasn't a very good defender at Kansas State. And, under Ben, you got to play defense. And if he's not a great defender, We talked about how we think this defense should be better, hopefully maybe top 50 in the country. But if you have one guy that's not very good, it's going to drag the defense down a little bit, right? And frankly,
especially if he's not doing a good job on offense either, right?
Missing shots. Exactly.
He might be unplayable at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on. And then can one of the three freshmen, right? So this freshman class, Trey Thompson, Tate Sage, who I've heard has been playing really good, and then Yurok, the center. Can one of the three guys maybe carve a role in year one, maybe really step up, and we can rely on that said person, whether it's Yurok, Sage, or Thompson, to come off the bench and do good things for us? And that kind of gets into now what I want to do is kind of my starting lineup, what I think the starting lineup will be, and kind of the backups. At point guard, Bennett Sturts. I think shooting guard will be Brendan Howson. Small forward, Tavion Banks. Power forward, Alvaro Figueres. And then Cam Maniau at center. And then, once again, going back to what Ben kind of said, 8-man rotation. I think the three guys that we're going to rely upon, especially right away, Cooper Koch, Cale Combs, and Isaiah Howard. And then you have kind of like the next three guys, which I just talked about, the three freshmen, Trey Thompson, Trevin Yurok, and Tate Sage. And once again, can one of the three guys, can we rely on one of those guys? Points per game then. So I have Bennett Sturts leading the way with 17.2 points per game, which is a little bit less than what he averaged at Drake. I have Alvaro Figueres, the next in line at 11.8, and then Brendan Howson at 8.4. I just figured, most games, he should average at least a couple threes a game, and then some games maybe even more than that, right? So 8.4, right. And then I have Tavion Banks at 7.6 and Cooper Koch at 7.6. I have our total points per game at 74.4, which is about 8 less than what we averaged last year. We averaged about 82 points per game. I did look and see what the average was in the Big Ten last year, because I kind of wanted to see, and the average in the Big Ten last year was 75.5. And so this would be kind of right around average. And once again, if you have a better defense, you can do this with 74.4 points per game. We can average a little bit less than what we did under Fran, because at 82 points per game under Fran, we needed all those 82 points because usually our defense would not be able to get the job done.
The starting five is exactly who I thought it would be. And then, you talked about the guys off the bench that might have a significant role, and then the freshmen, who's going to be able to step up. I think there's opportunities for those guys to play, especially early on. Yeah. And so I agree with that. I think the biggest thing that you hit the nail on the head is like, dude, we don't need to score 80 points a game to hopefully win now. If we play with just effort on defense and
exactly
toughness, that should account for something, right? Like holding your opponents to less than 80, 90 points a game to try to win every shootout. I think that's the most important thing that I'm looking for. It may not be great at times, right? I think this season, I listened to David Eichel and them, and they could see it being a bit of a roller coaster, especially early on. And I think that's true, right? These guys, a lot of these guys, it is a big jump from the Missouri Valley to the Big Ten. And again, it's the level of competitions. It's gonna get, it's gonna be tough. But I think you have really good core pieces on this team in Bennett and Alvaro, and then obviously, maybe Brendan Howson. But who's gonna be the next guys to step up? That's the question.
Yeah, and that's why I think, in my opinion, the non-conference is so big. Once again, you just said it kind of might be a roller coaster right away. Offensively, how long will it take for us to all gel? Non-conference is big time. I do want to say this. So I had Colby also do the points or the starting five, and he actually thinks Isaiah Howard will start over Brendan Howson. And I asked why he thought that, and he thinks it's because Brendan's defense isn't going to be there, and he just thinks that Ben will roll with a guy with better defense. And so he actually has Isaiah Howard starting. We'll see if that is the case or not. I've also seen people maybe thinking Cooper Koch will start, maybe over Tavion Banks. And Colby has us finishing with 78.3 points per game, so a little bit more than I am. Maybe he's a little bit, maybe a little bit more optimistic when it comes to the offense. All right, so let's now get into. I have a few things about the schedule, and then we're just going to kind of predict kind of what we might finish in a way. Because this schedule is pretty difficult. I think the non-conference, for the most part, is manageable, but I think the Big Ten play will be pretty tough. Now, we do have a tough stretch in late November, starting with Ole Miss, who made the tournament last year, beat Iowa State. Now, they lost a couple of their guys from last year, but they did bring in some transfers, so they're going to be pretty good. And then the next day, then we will play either Grand Canyon or Utah. Now, if you're talking a tougher matchup, Grand Canyon, I mean, I think this is their first year in the Missouri or in the Mountain West Conference, and they should be pretty good this year. Utah is going to, I think, have a down year. And then we play at Michigan State, Maryland, and then at Iowa State. So you're talking 5 really tough games in a row. I think that after December 11th, I think we're going to know a lot of answers about this team after playing that 5-game stretch. And then talk about a really tough stretch in early January. We play Illinois, at Purdue, at Indiana, 3 games in 7 days, which will be pretty dang tough. That's another 3-game stretch where we will know a lot about this team after those 3 games. We go 2 weeks then without a road game, which I think will help us. I think we have a kind of like a bye week in a way where we don't play for like a week. We play Rutgers, and then we're off for like 8 days, and then we play USC at home, which will be a nice little break for us. And then we have our West Coast road trip. Last year we did horrible on our West Coast road trip at USC, at UCLA. This year we play at Oregon, which should be a tough game, and then at Washington. Yep. My hope is, like, can we split those 2 games? And then we just finish off the year. What's nice is out of the last 7 games, we play 4 of them at home, but, like at Nebraska to end the year, like at Penn State shouldn't be that good. Can we win there? Michigan, last home game of the year. That's going to be a big time game. So, the schedule, once again, it's pretty tough. I really hate that we drew Purdue twice out of all the teams. It's like, really, of course, it has to be Purdue, the best team in the league, more than likely. Starting the Big Ten play at Michigan State is never fun or easy. That kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I think for me, I kind of predicted, I kind of went through the schedule, like 20 and 11 and 9, the Big Ten play is kind of what I think is manageable, is maybe a good expectation. And I think if you finish with that, given how good the league is, I do think the Big Ten will have at least 10 teams in the tournament. I think that is a tournament team, maybe like a 10 seed in the tournament, 11 seed at that. But that's kind of what I think the year will go.
Again, we talked about there's going to be ups and downs, but you're right. You're going to find out come Big Ten play right out the gate, kind of who this team is, what we are good at, what we're not good at. And so the whole goal is just to make it to the tournament, right? And you never know what could happen. And the one thing I do know, after last year's success with Drake, if you get Ben McCollum in a tournament style setting, hey, he can give you a fighter's chance against anyone. And you saw that last year.
Yep, against Missouri, against a team that was like averaging like 80-some points per game, and they couldn't do anything.
Completely took them out of it. So,
and then honestly, like Texas Tech, I know they ended up losing by double digits, but I mean they kept that game close, especially in the first half. It was a good game. It wasn't like it was over in the first 3 or 4 minutes. They put up a fight. I think this year, if you can just make the tournament, I don't care what seed you are, that is a big first year accomplishment. It really is, given, a completely new roster, first year, pretty tough schedule. That would be a huge accomplishment. I think going back, one more thing with the schedule is there are games on the schedule where, man, we have a huge opportunity to boost our resume. I mean, you're talking at the beginning of the year, going on the road at Michigan State, that first Big Ten game on the road, huge game. Yep. January 3rd, which we kind of start our second portion of the Big Ten schedule, versus UCLA at home. Huge opportunity at home to beat a team that's probably going to be ranked.
Yep.
Illinois at home, at Purdue, another big opportunity. Purdue later in the year at home. I mean, we're probably not going to win on the road. I mean, that I'm just chalking that up as a loss. Yeah. But at home on February 14th, Valentine's Day, who knows? Maybe we can get the job done that game. Huge opportunity. Last home game of the year against Michigan. So we will have opportunities this year to have some fun, number one. But once again, we are talking like a team that, is maybe a borderline bubble team. you have a lot of opportunities to really boost your resume. Another game like at Iowa State, that's another game where like if you somehow went in that game and won, Iowa State's going to be good the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be a tournament team. So that's going to help your resume. So we will have a lot of opportunities. And then there are games on the schedule too, where in my opinion, they're must-win games. Like you just got to win at Minnesota, Northwestern at home, Penn State, Nebraska at home. Like you got to win those games. Non-conference, you got to beat Xavier in a couple weeks. I know Xavier's not a bad team, but like you're at home, it's their game of the year. The crowd's going to be there. It's your first kind of legit non-conference game. You got to win that game. And then you just got to take care of business against the really bad teams. I know we should, but you go back to a few years ago when we lost to some really bad team when we were 30 points favorites.
Yeah.
It can always happen. And so you don't want to take those games lightly either. You got to take care of business against the teams that you should easily win.
Yeah. The other part of making the tournament, like especially if you're a bubble team, like you said, is they look at your quality wins, but also what are your bad losses? And if you don't have too many bad losses, that might separate you for sure.
Exactly. All right, well, that will do it for this episode. I mean, what a fun episode. I'm just super excited for this year to be able to do episodes because it was just something last year where I did a few of basketball episodes, but it just wasn't a lot because it just frankly, the motivation and the want, the desire, and I mean, frankly, most people were kind of checked out. So what's the point of doing basketball episodes? I think this year, people are not going to be checked out. People are going to be engaged. People are going to be excited for the year, excited for the season. And so I'm really excited to do more basketball podcasts because they are always fun. And yeah, I'm just super pumped. Few days away from tip-off against Robert Morris on Tuesday night. Officially the start of the Ben era. And we hope that it goes well, especially in this first year. And we can't wait. So go Hawks and go Ben McCollum.